Jim, a slightly more medium-term question from the perspective of central bank priorities. Now, again, in emerging markets, as a follow-through to what happened in the developed world, more and more central banks went to a single target focused on inflation. I happened to hear an earlier interview of you where you were talking about, shift in mood towards perhaps nominal GDP targeting in the developed world. I was curious to know whether you think that the mood in the emerging markets could also change away from sort of single-focused inflation targeting?
So I think this is tricky due to the nature of the international financial system and institutional memory, because a number of countries that have had single policy, in particular inflation targeting, have failed quite often to meet those inflation targets. So countries that would be like those that suddenly announced nominal GDP targeting, I suspect the markets might not be very forgiving of those. But others that have generally been successful in reaching the inflation targets, why not? Because we live in an era, by and large, around the world, where the biggest fear is one of deflation rather than inflation. And even for those countries that have thought very much about the dilemmas of inflation targeting, I believe that inflation, single policy-driven central bank focus of just on inflation targeting has sort of lost its way. I thought that before this crisis, and with this crisis, it becomes very clear to me that what we have to do is going right back to your first question, is not try and increase the probability of a V-shaped recovery, but to try and increase the probability that the GDP lost around the world through this pandemic can be at least made up for as soon as possible. And one way of doing that is to adopt nominal GDP targeting. So by and large, I also think it is something governments should consider giving their central banks in emerging countries as well as in the developed world. But with the caveats that for those countries that have not succeeded in achieving the inflation targets they set out, they'd want to be careful.
So perhaps a little early for India. We've only completed one cycle of our inflation targeting regime. If we give it up this soon, may send out the wrong message, perhaps.
I think it could be quite easily misinterpreted in India's case. But I do think adjusting the framework for accounting for a much more thoughtful, albeit ambitious fiscal policy framework would be a very sensible thing for India to do.